Hi, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show, the show for animal training and behaviour nerds, where I, Ryan Cartledge, interview the world's most proficient animal training and behaviour geeks. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to this on so that you don't miss a single episode. Each episode of this show is brought to you on behalf of the ATA membership. And if you like the conversations in this episode, then you're invited to continue them with like-minded behaviour nerds within the membership area, which you can find out more about at www.animaltrainingacademy.com. You'll get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help problem solve your training challenges. Plus, we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forum areas. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behaviour geeks. But we will start today's episode where I'm excited to welcome back Dante Camacho to continue my conversation with him. If you haven't listened to part one of our conversations, you can find it as the previous episode to this one in whatever you are listening to the show on. We encourage you to head back and listen to that to learn all about all of the fantastic things Dante has been up to during his career so far. Dante is the founder of DanteDogWorks. He focuses on teaching other dog trainers and dog owners worldwide how to train and live with dogs using positive reinforcement-based training successfully. He started his dog training career in the late 90s and was one of the first dog trainers to introduce clicker training in Brazil. Dante is an international presenter and a dog sports enthusiast, having represented Brazil and Canada in multiple world agility competitions, titled dogs in rally obedience and dock diving, taught and performed dog dancing for almost a decade in Canada and the US, and in recent years developed an online dog training platform that offers multiple courses for his Brazilian audience. He's a teacher for the Animal Behaviour and Welfare post-grad course at the UNIRP University, and since 2020, Dante has worked as a volunteer developing training programs and training staff at the Rio Preto Zoo. So without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Dante back to the show today, who's patiently waiting by in Brazil. Hey Dante, thanks so much for making the time to come and hang out with us again at Animal Training Academy.
Hey, Ryan. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, the first chat we had. So I'm very excited to just, keep going. It's been a lot of fun.
We love hearing, and I love hearing people's behavioural odysseys. So we appreciate all of your sharing that you shared with us in part one, where you mentioned your viral wolf training video, and you said to me after we pushed stop that you haven't really mentioned some of the things we talked about. The viral wolf training video, everyone, was where we left off in part one. One thing you mentioned that you hadn't really mentioned before was the super dogs. And I thought maybe you could start by reminding everyone what super dogs is, and maybe I'd be curious to know what one of your funnest memories from doing that show, if show is the right word, was.
Yeah, I think show is the right word. Super Dogs is we call it's just a family entertainment show that has dogs in it. And it's over 30 years old in Canada. And it just performs all across Canada, all through the year in fairs. And it's usually a show with at least 15, 20 dogs and handlers. And it's most of these people are just, regular dog owners that do stuff with their dogs that apply to be part of the show and get the chance to go and play with their dogs and show to a big audience. And I was invited to, show my dogs in 2007. I think that was the first time. I had a couple of dogs that were doing dog dancing, and they were really interested in, seeing what I was doing. So I had the chance to show my dogs, and they really liked it. So I was with them for about 8 years, traveling across Canada. And I guess the biggest, the strongest memory I have, and probably the nicest memory I have, was one of my, I think it was the first year I was performing at the Calgary Stampede, which is a big country fair in Calgary, Alberta. And one of the shows, always at the end of the show, you get to, people come out with all the dogs and, thank the audience. And we were performing for about maybe 3,000 people that day. And at the end, I had just started. Yeah, I had just started with the show. And I got to come out with one of my dogs. And people, you just come out and you wave to the audience, and the dogs are just, free running back and forth, like going crazy on the floor. It's a big blue carpeted floor and all these lights and music and all that. And I clearly remember I had the friend that actually invited me to be part of the show. She was next to me and she had papillons and her dogs were running crazy. And my dog was actually looking at me thinking, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to play or do? But I just thought that is probably like the dream of anyone that has a dog and wants to train their dog. Because you're just out here, your dog is happy, you're doing what you love and enjoying yourself, and you're getting to travel, and all these people are like so happy as well to see you. And that is something that actually is very touching, because you see how much influence you can have on people just by playing with your dog, just by interacting in a happy way with your dog. You just make a difference on children's, on elderly, on all these people that come to the show. And some of them, come even from cultures where we're not, that close to dogs. And they just leave that place with a different perspective of what dogs are like. And so that is probably my most fond memory of the whole thing. Of course, there's scary memories as well when you're performing like to more than 1,000 people, and you're like, "Oh my God, what if everything goes wrong? What if my dog stops and poops in the middle of the floor?" But eventually, like after so many years doing this, you actually learn that it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Like the only people that actually care about perfection is us as trainers. The general audience, they want to see dogs being dogs. So if a dog poops in the middle of the floor, people just think, oh, that's a dog. And that actually looks much more like my dog than a perfect dog that does everything, perfectly around. It runs and jumps and, and listens perfectly. So that's one of the secrets of performance for audiences, is getting people to connect by seeing that the dog that's there is no different from the dog they have at home. And the only difference is that we're communicating and we're playing. And if we can inspire people to do some more of that with their dogs too, that's a win.
No, I can definitely relate to that. And remember when I first started training birds and doing free flight bird shows, and thinking that our birds and my training were not good, and then visiting other shows and going, so birds and trainers also face these challenges in other places. It's not just me. I'm curious from your, not from the audience's perspective, because as you explained so beautifully, they like to relate to dogs who don't always do what we expect or want the dogs to do. But can you think of a time from your training perspective where things didn't go to plan?
Oh, probably not only one time, many times.
Can you think of it? Does any particular story or instance stand out?
I don't think as far as training goes, because I always approached, the dog's performance. I always understood what was happening, and if something didn't go as planned, I probably didn't expect. I didn't have such great expectations that things were going to be perfect. When you're doing a show for a couple of weeks, and your dog's getting tired, and there's maybe you're trying to do something new that's not that well proven yet. That things can go wrong, and you find a way out, and you're prepared for that. So there were instances where you talk to the dog, and your dog looks at you like, yeah, I've never heard that word. I don't know what you're talking about. Or but in my case, my dogs were in general pretty good. So it never happened like that. A dog just took off and, oh, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to chase the toy that I saw backstage. It never really happened to me, but it does happen sometimes when dogs get maybe a little too excited about things, and you're planning on maybe, okay, we should do this a bit slower because it's part of the show and the other dog should be faster than you. But then your dog doesn't really agree with that. It's just, and does his own thing. And the whole purpose of maybe an act or part of the show that was, to go one way because yours screw up, the whole thing just falls apart because you can't really get the results you wanted. And that has to do mostly with, playing with the audience when you get people to cheer for a dog or to cheer for another dog. And then, sometimes things, they never really happen just by chance. Everything is planned when you're doing a show. It's just like a rehearsal of anything you do, a theater act or anything. So sometimes dogs, because of the moment, the heat of the moment, they don't really agree with what the producer wanted, and they choose to do things a little bit different. But I guess everybody understands that that's part of working with dogs, right? That they have their own opinion sometimes, and even if you train them, there may come a moment where other elements of the environment may influence their behavior in a way they were not expecting.
Yeah, it makes me think about the importance of, as you said, playing with the audience and being able to do that, because as you said, it's a stressful situation potentially when you first get started, because suddenly you've got all of these people watching you, and I'm thinking about generalizing behavior and our ability as humans to do that. I'm thinking about when I learn a new podcast guest's name and I can say it correctly 10 times before we push record, but then we change the context and suddenly I've got to say it like within, surrounded by other words. Like I noticed that I always trip up, even though I've just said it 10 times. And I imagine if you've got a well-rehearsed show and then you go out and things change, then there's a skill there to be able to build a behavior to deal with those situations. And I'm curious to hear, like, did you find that your experience doing that in a show situation as a presenter translated over to your dog training and your animal training and your ability to quickly improvise and build required skills when your dog training doesn't go to plan?
Yeah, totally. I was a competitor before I was a performer. So I had my routines when I was going to compete, like, I do this breathing and I do this warm up and I do this, and it's all very tense and it's all very systematic. And that obviously influences the dog. I was lucky that my dogs never really seemed to be if something wrong happened, it was maybe just the fact that they would anticipate a very exciting event and maybe behave a little bit more crazy just because, I'm giving all these cues that what's going to come. But when I did the shows, it made me much more relaxed about competing. I actually, when I performed, and maybe that's something most people that actually have watched me don't know, when I performed freestyle routines, most of the time I only had them partially rehearsed. I only had parts of it rehearsed, and I would do with the dog and maybe do changes and perform different behaviors based on what I felt I could do at that moment and where we were on stage. What we had done just before. If I had done a race, I know my dog would not only be tired but very excited. So if we had played with a specific toy, I know like he would be, or whatever memory he'd had just of what he had just done on the floor, he would probably come out with that expectation again if it was too short between one thing and the other. So I would change what I would do. But it would all look like it was rehearsed when I performed the routine. But I had, like some cards on my sleeves that I know I could go back to if things went, Ray, oh, he's not responding to this, or I can see in his eyes that he's a little too excited. So I knew that I could go back to certain things that would help me, gather my thoughts and plan what I could do after. And sometimes I would actually, and I know that's not good training, but sometimes I would do just, backstage decide, okay, I'm actually going to add this now, to this routine, or this trick that I just, practice for a day or two. I'll go in and try. Because when you're performing, we do, the whole preparation, come with the dogs early before they're actually performing. We, desensitize them and habituate to the environment and all the noises and all the things and all the smells and all that. But when you're on the floor actually performing, there's something you can't really rehearse. And that is, not only the audience, but how you're actually feeling. I can go 10 times out there with my dog. If there's, if I'm not really performing, then it's different, of course. And the dogs usually notice that difference. It's probably a very big difference, actually. But so you kind of learn that, you have to go out and you have to have a plan B always. And it made especially my competition become much easier. I felt like, okay, I can, if I can do this, like just running an agility run or doing like a rallyo run, it becomes really easy. And I think for the dogs too, became really easy because of what they learned to handle. And actually, when I say handle, people may think, oh, it was difficult. Actually, it's just a matter of that all these cues, all the loud music, all the people screaming just become cues to the dog that good things are coming in, that good things are happening. We have that idea that this will be scary, but it really, because we introduce it so gradually to them, it all becomes just the opposite. Cues for excitement and fun. People say, oh, my dog could never do this. Yeah, probably if you try to just go out and do it. But if you introduce it properly, it's quite surprising how dogs can handle situations that are you would even find people having a hard time to handle, like even understanding what's happening. Right? I don't think a dog really understands what a show is. All the strobe lights and all this thing and all these, it's just there. It's just stimuli. It's just.
Well, I think that's impressive. I'm assuming that those plan Bs, you had plan Bs practice, so you could just reach for another set of behaviors that you'd accuse. Sorry, go on.
Usually just understanding very reinforcing behaviors that my dogs had. So I would just go back to them, or short sequences that I knew were very easy and clear for the dog and very reinforcing in themselves. So I would, go back to them. That gives you a little bit of time to, assess the situation and see what you can do. And it may happen that you can't really do anything else. You just end your performance there, and that's it. But it gives you that time to actually make the right decision. But usually it's just, they were just the behaviors that I knew were very reinforcing for my dog.
Yeah, and part of what you said back then, you said that you were waiting backstage and you decided to throw this in or throw that in, and you said it probably wasn't very good training. But I feel like from an outsider observing and listening to what you're saying sounds, I used the word impressive before, but also I would say sounds like very good training to have options up your sleeve. And I'm assuming, and I like what you said there, that it gave you time to think, so you could see that you needed to think. I'm assuming you had some cues from your dog that something didn't quite go right, or you weren't feeling something, that you used that as a cue to jump to XYZ cues and behaviors, highly reinforced behaviors, and allowed just time to think. Because additionally, if you're just training your dog in your lounge there, you can just scatter some food and think. But if you're doing freestyle dancing, you've got to create some space somehow for you to make decisions.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, if you know the dog actually loves and does the behaviors, it's actually the opposite. Right? That just makes you more relaxed. You don't worry as much because you can always lean back on that. So one thing my dog loved to do, and I worked a lot, was healing. So, and he would heel very well, all directions, back and forth, sideways. So if I had to think about something, come back here, heel, and let's keep walking sideways because people love it. And then I can think about what I'm going to do next. And for him, it was so natural and reinforcing that we could do that.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that so far, Dante. I am aware that when we caught up last week, we discussed some actual things we're going to talk about today, but we've got stuck in many rabbit holes over these last two episodes. And before we push record for this second episode, we got down a rabbit hole about social media, which I am so tempted to share your thoughts on with our podcast audience, but we won't. I'm gonna push forward to that topic that we said we would talk about. I'm excited to talk about it as a topic that helps set the groundwork for everything we do with our animals, and something we touched on briefly in part one. And when we caught up last week, you said it's intricately woven into everything you teach, and that is relationships. Dante, what does a relationship with the animals we work with mean to you? In your words, why is this so important?
Okay. I guess I would consider even more important, because when we say animals, there's a huge it's a bit vague, actually, because we work with wild animals at the zoo as well. And relationship with them means something different than with dogs, and dogs being, our pets and being at home with us. And when I talk about relationship, I'm mostly talking about, and the importance of it, I'm mostly talking about the dogs. And understanding that the training aspect is very relevant, and it obviously builds relationship. I understand that every time I, teach my dog something new, I'm interacting in a positive manner, and my dog is being reinforced. And of course, that builds relationship. But I do believe that with dogs and with the dogs we live with, relationship goes much, beyond that. And throughout the years, I've learned that even though I could have a great training relationship with my dogs, I'm not training all the time, at least not consciously. I am, we are training each other all the time. We're learning all the time, but I'm not, conscious about or aware of everything that I'm doing and how that is influencing my dog's behavior. So what I use to guide my behavior at those moments is not, the science behind behavior and every action that I do and the rate of reinforcement of my actions. What we do is just think about relationship and how much we enjoy the presence of these animals and how much they find it important as well. So I think I even talked to you or mentioned last time before we recorded our chat that I find, and dogs teach me that all the time, that it's as important for my dog to be able to lie next to me as I'm talking to you here, and put his head or sleep with his head on my foot. I think that is, especially if I think about training in general, not just about living with my dog, but if I think about training in general, let's say I have this dog and I want to one day compete with this dog and I want to perform at a high level with this dog. And what I've learned throughout the years is that the amount of technical training that I put into it is obviously very important. But this relationship, this moment, this bonding, these possibilities are also very relevant and very important. And there will come a moment in time, and that probably also, is something I learned from performing in different venues, not only competing, where maybe something is not that clear. It's not as clear as you thought it was, or there's some change in the environment that makes the dog question something. And at that moment, I think what will actually save the day is the relationship, is what you've built with that dog that goes beyond the training sessions. So to me, relationship is as important as a training session or a formal training session, especially when we're talking about dogs and we're talking about our pets. We're talking about, everyday situations and living with these animals. So I try to bring that always in my training. Of course, that is part of how I live with my dogs. But, and that's something I have to confess, I've learned throughout the years. It wasn't natural. When I first started, as I mentioned, it wasn't like I was a dog person. So I first learned to train dogs. And then eventually I learned to have a relationship with them that went beyond the training. So today, that's something that I find very important and relevant. And I strive to teach my students the importance of it, and I guess there's no real, book about how to behave and relate with your dog. But I guess we all understand what it is to have a good relationship with someone, a person, right? Is someone you trust, someone you like, you want to see doing well, you want to see feeling well, and you respect, especially. So I just try to, bring all of that to the way we interact and we live with dogs.
So let me relate some of my own personal experience to you and see if I'm understanding just parts of what you just said there. What I'm thinking is just a part of what you said. You want your dog in the show arena, show ring, agility competition. If something goes wrong, that's when relationship becomes important, because I'm interpreting what you're saying as the dog stopping and being a little bit unsure about what behaviours are going to work now in this present moment, and looking to you for information. And the word you used in amongst all of that was trust. That's how I see my role as a father now with my daughter, is that, one thing she's going to do is that she's looking to me constantly to provide guidance and to provide information and to help her be successful, because she doesn't understand a lot about what's happening and what to do and how to behave. Is my perspective as a father resonating with that part of what you said? Because there's a lot more to unpack there. I'm just picking one part apart. Is that?
Yeah, it is exactly that. And I think it may even go a little bit beyond, because even if you think about your daughter, maybe not now because she's too young, but eventually you'll want her to not look at you, to actually go forward and trust that she can do that on her own because of your relationship. Because there's no problems if things don't go exactly perfectly. That is also relationship, is the understanding that, sometimes you may do things on your own. You may be more independent. And, based on our relationship, you can trust, as you mentioned the word, that this is also okay. This is also part. It's not, I think it's important to mention that, because sometimes people think that, the role of guidance means role of control and, be on the dog all the time and everything. The dog needs to look at you to know what to do, or, and I think I see dogs as individuals, and I understand that they have their own agendas as well. But that doesn't mean that it has to, that I don't have to be part of their world when they're, doing their own things as well. Just like, as you mentioned, your daughter, she'll eventually do her own things, but she'll always take into consideration what she learned from you and what, what your relationship means.
And part of what you were talking about reminds me of learning from Ken Ramirez and one of his recent books, The Eye of the Trainer, sharing about working with police dog trainers and how he would go in and start with relationship and start with behaviors that would build relationships and foundational behaviors. And some stories shared about some conversations about how the training wanted to progress quickly within that organization to the tasks that these dogs were required to do. And I think you might be talking about similar things with regards to dogs in sports, that people maybe want to train them to do agility or to dock dive or to do freestyle dancing and aren't and potentially missing some opportunities to work on relationships. Have I understood that correctly? And if I have, is that a problem you're seeing? Is that why this is important to you, because you're seeing that problem?
I think, especially in the dog sport world, yes, that is to me an issue that I've encountered, and I think people are just missing because it's such a great part about having a dog, that part of the relationship. But as far as performance, I do think that that also makes a difference. And I've yet to encounter, especially if I talk about agility, a world champion that didn't have a great relationship with their dogs. So to me, that is telling. And I've seen a lot of very good dogs and very good handlers that they were very good, but there was always something missing because they very rarely could reach that their main goal, which is to be at the top. But it's there. There is a difference.
Well, just thinking about it logically, it makes sense that if that piece is missing and you're in whatever dog sports you are participating in, inevitably something is going to go wrong. And so what happens in those moments might separate being able to reach various levels of performance in those sports. And it's totally reasonable and rational in your explanation for anyone to understand, I think, why relationships are so important there. So that makes complete sense.
But I think, Ryan, that even when things go right, they can be more right if there is relationship behind it. The extra effort will happen if you have a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that is important. If let's say we're talking here, and what we can achieve and the things we can talk about is based on what we have built before, what we have talked before. I got to know you, and and we built a short relationship, right? It's a short amount of time. But if I had never talked to you before and I just got to answer these questions the first time, I'd never seen you, never talked to you, of course it's going to be different. So, it makes a difference all the time. People may not see it because they're so focused on behaviors, specific behaviors. But if you could compare like what you do, focus exclusively on behavior and leaving relationship out, and then doing the same thing and focusing on actually having a good relationship with that animal, you'll clearly see the difference. And you'll have much more fun too.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing it back to the podcast. I didn't think about that. For everyone listening, I always connect with guests before we record and on the day we record. And it is to build relationships, but I hadn't connected those dots with regards to what we're talking about now. So I appreciate that. I'm hearing that you're adding the benefit of increased discretionary effort from dogs. When discretionary effort, they're more... A dog without a good relationship that's performing in an agility sport might do the minimal required to achieve the reinforcement, whilst if the relationship component is added, there's more motivation to put in more effort and not just do the minimum required, but go above and beyond.
Yep. I think it's exactly that. If you think about work, it's the same. If you work with a friend or if you work with a person that's unknown, you can do the same job. They can pay you the same thing. But working with a friend, if needed, you're going to put the extra work.
And
I think it is.
We've talked about trust multiple times already. How important is the concept of trust? Is it the same? Is it different?
I think it's the same. I think it's even more crucial because trust is important to exclusively the training aspect. The dog, and maybe that has also to do with a good training or not good training. Good training naturally builds trust because there's no. The information is always reliable, right? Things are always clear, and I think that builds trust. It doesn't matter if it's always if it's a yes or a no. You'll have access to this, or in this context, you don't have access to this. If it's always clear, then I think a dog can trust that will be there. But if we think about trust more in regards to relationship in general, it is also then I think it's the same what we were talking before. I think there's another layer that has to do with clarity of training that trust is built on as well.
Well, it makes sense to me as you say that clarity of training. I was thinking clarity of communication, and that's when it goes beyond that training session to a dog who understands your cues as you go about your daily life as well.
Yeah. Like we were talking about, dogs or training, there's not so much focus or relationship with dogs that are based only on, training and go back to your kennel or go back to your crate or whatever. And relationship with dogs, they're also, based on being and living with dogs and experiencing the life with the dog. And interacting in other moments away from training. A dog can be or live in a context where it just trains and does nothing else, trains and rests, whatever, right? And loves its reinforcers and all of that, and trusts completely the training. It understands, and the training can be very clear and all that. But then we have the other side of trust that is what the dog will lean on when the context is not familiar to the dog. It's not something that it has seen or rehearsed before.
And we talked about when we caught up last week that you're going to think about 3 ways that you currently incorporate teaching everything we've just talked about within your work with clients and online teaching. So I can't wait to hear. And you said, I always often give our guests 3, 4, 5. You said it might be 1, it might be 5. So I'm curious to hear what you've come up with anyway.
Okay, so how, I think that especially if we're talking about general public, people are often scared or not scared. There's a block. People don't understand much about training. So I think they separate it a lot from, the way they normally relate with their dogs. They see it as, like, oh, this whole thing here is completely different from what we do every day. I'm actually scared of telling this trainer what we do or how we live because this is not correct. So I think the first thing is to allow people to be what they want to be with their dogs or the way they want to be and understand that that's exactly how it's supposed to be. There's no one way that people should, be with their dogs. People create their own dynamics and things work or don't, but based on how people are and they choose to interact with their dogs and live with their dogs. So I think the first thing is to allow people to just open up and be what they normally are. And then I try to bring training into that and adapt as much as possible to what that relationship already is. So without any judgment, without, telling, oh, this is wrong, dogs shouldn't be doing this, or no, it's my goal is to help you have and your dog have the best life possible together and with the least stress possible. But this is something that maybe we as trainers have not been doing a very good job at. That is, allow people to understand or tell people that, the way they live with their dogs is not wrong. It's just that, sometimes we can use training to make things better. Every relationship can have issues, but it doesn't mean you just have to end the relationship and build something completely different because, we don't have to change who we are to have well-behaved and trained dogs. Okay? I think that's one thing.
I'm curious. I'm curious to build on that. Well, it's really interesting to hear you talk about this after we've just read a super geeky book. You probably haven't heard of it. It's called Non-Linear Contingency Analysis by Dr. Joe Lang. We've just read that. People's faces when I say that name, and I think Joe would be comfortable with me joking about that. He knows that. But I learned something in this book about response bias, and that is that people say what they think the person they're talking to wants to hear. And they were able to generate. They did a Dr. Lang, I'm butchering this most likely, but they did a study where they interviewed fighter pilots of planes, and they asked them to relay their experience to their instructor, and then they asked non-fighter pilots to pretend that they were fighter pilots and explain their experience in terms of what they thought the instructor might want to hear, and they were able to explain their experience in really similar ways to the actual fighter pilots. And so this idea that, and once again, this is all new to me, and I'm probably butchering this, and I apologize to those who have anything to do with studying response bias. But the idea is that people will say what they think the person that they're talking to wants to hear. And I imagine that's kind of what you're talking a little bit about, is that your clients are expecting their trainer to potentially want to hear certain things about their day-to-day life. So how do you kind of get over that hurdle and allow them to be vulnerable and brave and therefore to tap into those parts that are happening every day with their dogs, that are important to a relationship, that affect the training that you're about to do?
I think the easiest way is to just drop the guard, drop your mask, your dog trainer hat, and be a dog owner. And tell them, how you relate, how your parents talk to your dog, how, like I have my mother-in-law, if you look at a trainer's perspective, she does everything wrong with the dogs, but that's life. That's how things are. So if people can relate to your experience and see that it's, has similarities with what they live through, then I think it's much easier for them to feel comfortable. And that's, I think that was the second aspect I was going to talk, is like this ability to actually relate to your clients, or to being them dog trainers or, pet owners, relate to what they're doing, their lives and their struggles. And, they have kids, they have parents, they have partners, and understanding that, this is normal. And I think that helps quite a bit, and helps you as a trainer as well, very much, I believe, because your expectations also are more in line with reality. And yeah, I think that's sort of a freeing thing, just let go of all the, preconcepts and ideas of what a trainer is and what a trained dog is. These are relationships. We're using science and positive reinforcement to help with relationships that already exist.
It's a big challenge, I would say, for myself in some areas of my life, and for many trainers to let go of that, because they have an identity that I am a dog trainer, and for that identity to be true, this needs to be, this needs to be, and this needs to be. And so how do you, with your clients, with your professional trainers who come to you for learning, how do you help trainers get over those hurdles themselves? Once again, is it being vulnerable yourself?
It is a little different, because they already see you as, if you are in the position of a teacher, like for a dog trainer, they already see you as, of course, not everyone, but some of your students will see you as someone that is like untouchable. You can break the rules because you're so good at what you do, right? So it's a constant telling of these people. Like usually with my students, I'm meeting them every week, and online, in my groups, and trying to go through their experiences and make clear when we have to think as trainers, and then the moment we're actually moving away from that thinking to actually be able to be more efficient as trainers, right? So, and that's maybe something we were talking about social media. That's something that I think I also learned from social media, that the more real and natural you are with the stuff you do, the stuff you say, the less people will think you're trying to tell them what to be and what to do. And I think people are more open to experience what you're saying when you're just being yourself. They're naturally curious about who you are and what you do. If they're listening to you, if they're spending, their precious time to listen to you, being on the Instagram post or YouTube video or through a lesson that you're teaching in your course, they're interested. You already have the most important thing, their time and their interest. So I think it's easier for them to connect if you show what's behind the trainer as well. It has, of course, there has to be a balance because you have to maintain professionalism and all of that. But I think that's what I do with the people I teach, my students. We try to build a relationship where people know me a little bit beyond of the trainer, and I have my own dogs, and my own dogs do stuff that their dogs do or their clients' dogs do too, and it's okay. It's not that I can't train this. No, it's just because I like my dog to do that. Like my dog steals socks. Like my wife loves it. She thinks it's the funniest thing ever. Like, fine, I'm not scared of showing people that, the dog does that. But if that becomes an issue to me, which, I was a little worried about, I just taught the dog to come and give me the sock when I asked to, and I, give him a treat. But I tell people, yeah, of course the dog steals a sock. That's, he loves doing that. He has a lot of fun. We have fun. And so I think that helps people, feel, I'm not feel so worried. Right? Because especially trainers feel, I think that pressure, especially about their own dogs, their own, like the way they relate, they have to be role models and everything they do. I'm not saying, you don't have to train your dog, but I'm just saying that you can be real. You don't have to be that worried. And I think, I don't know if you agree with that, but we learn from social media that you can be more, original, you can be more yourself, and that will connect more with people. But at the same time, people are much more afraid of being themselves because they are so easily criticized and blocked, from everything through social media. And so there's two sides to that. That's why also as, a teacher, I try to create an environment that is safe for them to do that. So we have our groups where we can talk and chat and not have to be so worried about, not being perfect to everyone outside.
It's funny you're talking about people see you as a teacher and therefore you can do whatever you want. I started to draw similarities in my mind, like, is that the same as a client sees us? But I think there are some differences there with regards to people haven't spent as much time watching your videos when they're just a client of yours. But as you mentioned, they've still invested in you. They're still there. And so you be real. You show a bit of vulnerability yourself, give them, permission is not the right word, but let them know it's okay that their dog and their relationship isn't perfect because neither is yours. And then
or it is perfect.
It is perfectly imperfect. and then so there's a suggestion then to say that, okay, cool, you've called me here because of your aggressive dog lunging at other dogs during walks, but we've shared that we're imperfect and we've found out this stuff's not happening at home to start on relationship stuff in day-to-day life before tackling the aggression stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
When we talk about a client more specifically, mm-hmm. right? The example you gave, let's mm-hmm. say there is a client with the I think that the initial connection where, we'll talk to people and, I can talk about relationship, but it's not so direct. There's not a script where I'll say, this is what we have to do before we start tackling this issue. Of course, I'll gather all the information and try to figure out what's happening. But for example, I do have a dog that had issues with reactivity. So I'll make sure that I'll share that with the person, that you're not the only person that's going through this. I've been through this as well. There is possibly a way to, manage this or to fix this or whatever. And I'm here, to share with you all that I know to help you with that. So I think that's the first. I think just a person has to feel that it's comforted, like it has, it has reached help. And I think that once that happens, then I'll, start analyzing a little more, okay, how that relationship or how much the relationship the dog has with that person or with the family is actually influencing the behavior outside. Because sometimes it's not really, there's nothing really wrong with their relationship in the home. But there's other things that can get dogs to react. But I think that's the most important, that first impression that people feel, as I said before, they understand that, you understand them, especially because you have. If I don't have a dog that's reactive, or I didn't have a dog that was reactive, it's okay. Like I can share with them maybe some other experiences or tell them how I understand what they're going through and, or how much I may feel similar to how they're feeling. So that we can get that first connection, and so I guess that's the approach with a pet owner, even before all the idea of training, and of course, if we think about actually what we do, I try to always approach holistically training, especially when we're talking about behavioral issues. So there's a bunch of things that we can do. I will look into the person's the life and how they live with the dog and see what we can do. But very often, people end up understanding what's happening before they actually change it. And that in itself is something that, changes the whole picture. The issue may even be happening still, but, it's much easier to move with the training and, find options that people are comfortable with.
Looking at the time, I'm going to pass the rabbit holes that are currently in front of me because there's many of them. The original question was, what are 3 ways you currently incorporate teaching, the importance of relationship within your work with clients and online teaching? You shared that the first thing is to allow people to be what they want to be with their dogs. And you shared about being vulnerable yourself, which gives permission for others to be vulnerable as well. And that's something I see a lot within our Animal Training Academy, our members being vulnerable, allowing other members to then become vulnerable themselves, which builds on a relationship wonderfully and builds that trust. Because, as you mentioned, being vulnerable in some places opens yourself up for criticism and undesirable feedback. And your second point I wrote down, but I crossed out. But that was to remind me, because I'm going to butcher it. But it was to relate to your client and to help them feel safe.
Yeah. And just, I think it's just letting them know that their experience is not that we're diminishing the importance of it, but that we acknowledge it. We know, especially the example you gave of, reactivity. It may be really hard on people and families and their relationship with their dogs. So being empathetic, I guess that's the word, and allowing them, telling them or letting them know that, maybe you have gone through similar situations or that you understand how they feel. And that is a way to build my relationship with them. But very important as a first impression, how to approach the client, I find. So that definitely changed over the years for me, like how I used to, look at the problem. Okay, this is what's wrong, and this is what we're going to do, and totally ignore what the person is actually going through. So I find that if I don't focus on my relationship with that person, and at least that first impression, I'm going to have much lesser chance of getting that person to commit or even understand the purpose of our training. So yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to get.
Yeah, and even number 1 and number 2 are so closely intertwined, and how I'm interpreting this, and it's I'm kind of interpreting it as that you incorporate this into your teaching by helping create safety for people. It's a safe place to be vulnerable. It's a safe, and then in my mind, it comes back to your example of working with a dog in, say, an agility competition, that you're building trust there, so that when things don't go wrong, that person has that relationship with you to look to you for.
Yeah. Of course, that is just the basis of it. But of course, there's a lot of skills that also go with it. Because it's not just having trust in not knowing what to do may not be very helpful, right? But basically, it is very similar. Like building trust in the relationship, as you mentioned, the trust to be right or be wrong, to feel one way or another. So that is, and I learned this, every day from people. And I'm lucky that my wife is also a psychologist, apart from being a dog trainer. But I learned this from my dogs. Like sometimes we don't really see what they're going through, and sometimes just giving them the opportunity to tell me and teach me. Like I do. Let's say this morning, I went training some agility with my young dog. I realized that if I train, and he's very excited and very, focused on toys, very motivated by toys and tug of wars. He loves the conflict of tugging and all of that. So I realized that especially by being such a training geek, I love training. So it's very easy for you to overtrain, train more than you should, right? Because you're so involved and you're so excited and things are going well and all of that. Right? Especially when you're in an open place like an agility field. It's different from doing it in your living room, when you can count repetitions and you're writing down stuff in your film. Like when you're running with your dog, things suddenly change completely, right? So I realized that if I had a toy available to my dog in the field, anywhere in the field, just laying there, that he would tell me when it was too much. So we were training and he's engaged and we're playing and all of that. He doesn't care about the other toy. But once we get to a point, so my goal is to never get to the point where he actually takes off and takes the other toy to tell me that he's, okay, I need a break, right? So he has to trust me to know that he can do that. He can be, some would say wrong, but to me it's not. It's just a way of communicating. And, so that also goes to people, to how I relate with people and students and all of that. That's why I say I learn from my dogs as well, not only how to train dogs, but also how to relate to people, because it's the easiest thing to do is to have a dog that's worried about making those types of mistakes. Because most people will be like, oh, no, you can't take off and go to a distraction. That's wrong. Right? Because, it is. In the rules of the game, that's wrong. But in the rules that I've created, and in this context, this is actually right to make me a better trainer and to help you. So our last sessions, he hasn't really had the need to go and take the other toy. And I can swap toys and use the one that is on the floor and drop the other one. It doesn't matter, because what matters is what we're doing together, and it's working. So,
well, I love it. And I imagine the audience of this show is really going to resonate with everything you've just shared. We have gone, I think, a decent car ride for the listeners of our show. They're probably pulling up to wherever they need to be. So I think it's probably a pretty good time for me to share some gratitude. I've chewed your ear off and had I've been asking you questions for the last couple of hours, Dante. We recorded both part 1 and part 2 to give everyone, just in case you're wondering. So I want to share some gratitude for you carving some time out of your week to hang out with us at Animal Training Academy. I want to share gratitude for following your passions with Siggy way back in the 90s and taking the information and showing people what's possible and touring and with your dog show and all of the sports you've been involved in, and now with your online training. We talk about ripples here at Animal Training Academy, and all of those, you talked about the kids watching your dog show. Who knows, what seeds you planted. They're the ripples. So I want to share gratitude because I think your ripples are kind of spread across the planet. And why here at Animal Training Academy is to help learners learn in ethical ways. And I think resonates strongly with what you've done, and whether intentionally or not, you've spread those riddles. So thank you for everything you've done throughout your life, Dante, and for hanging out with us in Animal Training Academy. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's been a pleasure. It's been such a nice talk. Like, it's rare that we get to just sit and, talk about the things we love so much, and have the time to do that. So I really appreciate the chance and the opportunity. Thank you.
And quickly, just before we jump off, do you want to remind people the best way to find you and get in touch?
You can find me on Instagram and on YouTube. My name, Dante Camacho, or DanteDogWorks. You'll find me there. And and it will be a pleasure to connect with people. And, training, as you said, will connect people all around the world. And, hopefully the effects and the ripple effects of this talk here, this podcast, will also bring more good stuff for everyone.
We do, of course, really appreciate all of you tuning in today as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you were interested in carrying on the conversation about working with our animals in the most positive, funnest, choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much everyone for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.